Starseed Ascension welcomes guests from a variety of backgrounds to gain perspectives, experiences, and information in the paranormal, spiritual, and ET space. We are a community of spiritual explorers who seek to help raise consciousness. And now, here's your host of Starseed Ascension, Jamie Voss Love.
Hello and welcome back to Starseed Ascension. I am your host, Jamie Voss Love, and we are excited to announce that we do have another round of Codes of Ascension starting right at the peak of the Galactic Gateway, December 16th. So you can go on to cosmiccodesofascension.com and register free. We have amazing facilitators, mediumship, activations, yoga nidra, manifestation workshop. So it's going to be fun. And just wanted to give a shout out, as always, to the Onyx Network, Race Hobbs, Margie K, the whole team, all of the show hosts, and just send some gratitude there. And tonight we have another very special guest. So let me tell you a little bit about him. Having come into this world as a highly sensitive young boy, he spent the majority of his life trying to ignore the extremely valuable aspect of himself in order to fit in. Instead, he focused all of his will and energy trying to mold himself into what he saw as society's accepted version of a healthy man, even going as far as spending 3 years as an airborne infantryman in the special ops of the Army. So eventually he realized something was missing. And in 2015, at the height of his career as a Silicon Valley executive in the video gaming industry, he left to go find out what it was that was missing from his life. And after stumbling on a channeling workshop in 2016, his life transformed and he discovered what was missing: a relationship with the feminine side of the universe to bring himself back into harmony. So with that, please welcome our guest tonight, Mr. Dave Witcher.
Hi, Jamie.
Hello. Welcome to the show. So good to have you.
Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you and hear more about your story and just your information that you have to share with everybody tonight, listening and watching. So just to start off, Dave, how did you get started thinking about revising how we think about the divine masculine and the divine feminine?
I got started, when I left San Francisco. I came back to my hometown of Kansas City. And I honestly was at that point of, I just kind of threw away 18 years of everything I had worked to establish. The only thing I really knew that I wanted at that point was I just wanted to spend more time with my dad. So my mom had passed away in 2001. My dad was up there in age. And when I was just completely lost, like that was it. I'm like, okay, I know I want to come back and spend more time with him. I don't know what that's going to look like, but I know that that's true. And so I packed up everything. I quit my job. I basically quit a job that nobody ever quits, and I was the head of product operations and product development for Japanese video game company in America. And when I said I was leaving, everyone was just like, what? Like, wait, what? And I'm like, yeah, I'm heading to Kansas City. And they were like, what? What are you going to do there? And I'm like, I don't know. But I just knew that I had to make a change. My life looked great on paper. And there were a lot of aspects of it that I really did like. But it just wasn't fulfilling in any way. So it wasn't feeding my soul. I came back to Kansas City and sure enough, I put some resumes out and I didn't really, it was crickets. Like nobody really responded. And that's what I thought would happen. of course, like what we expect to happen often is what happens.
Right. We always get what we think.
Yeah, or we're having a premonition of what's going to happen, right? And we think it's a bad thing, but actually it's a good thing. Right? And so it's sort of fumbling around. As you mentioned, I came across that channeling course, and I just fell headlong into my spiritual path. And the ironic part is that I spent 18 years in San Francisco and was just all up in cyberspace when I was there. And I had to come back to the Midwest to find my spiritual path, which is kind of funny. But so in desperately trying to figure out, like, who am I? Where do I go from here? I was, I took the channeling classes. I started, I took Reiki certifications. I was looking at my my astrology charts and all of these things, trying to find that breadcrumb trail that was going to lead me to myself, to a new vision, a new direction. And so very early on, I listened to somebody named Jim Self, and he's one of the old channelers from back in the 70s and 80s and stuff like that. And his material is really great. But one of the things that he said that really landed with me was, he said that, okay, a lot of this stuff that we talk about in the spiritual community is really fun and interesting, but how is it helping you? And so that just sat in the back of my mind. And every time I would work with something like my astrology chart, and I'm just like, okay, how is this helping me? How is this like giving me any actionable, information? And because of that, I started really pulling at a lot of strings and thinking about things. And, my whole life I've been really good at kind of like figuring out how stuff works. That's why I got into IT, even though I have degrees. I have degrees in philosophy and psychology and anthropology, but I went into the tech world because when I was young, I had a computer and I wanted to play video games. But back then, in order to play video games on a computer, you really needed to know how it worked, because it was hard, right? It wasn't like an Atari where you just plug the cartridge in and you go. And so all my life, I've been good at kind of like looking at everything and connecting the dots and understanding how things connect. And that's how I eventually became head of product operations, in a very competitive industry. So it was only 6 years. It took me 6 years to go from start to head of product operations, right? Because I just figured out how things work. And so I kind of like, I really got started when I was thinking about my sun sign is Cancer, and I was looking at tarot, and I was trying to understand how the Chariot card had anything to do with being a Cancer. I was just like, what is that? And I just was listening to a video on YouTube, and this woman had pulled out the Chariot card, and she said, oh, and it's also known as the Merkaba. And then I was like, okay, because I know the Merkaba is, the masculine and feminine come together. And what's the Cancer sign? It's like the 69, right? Which is the masculine and feminine come together. Well, the sign right before it is Gemini, and that card is the Lover's sign, where you have like the man and the woman facing each other. So that naturally flows, right? Then there's like the choice, and then the union. And then that made sense that like Aries, the card for Aries is the Emperor, right? But then wait a minute, Taurus was like, Taurus is the Hierophant. What? That doesn't make any sense. Taurus is supposed to be, for all of this to work, Taurus has to be the Empress. And then that's how I started really poking into things and going, well, why is there this obvious discrepancy? Like, Taurus has to be the Empress. And then when you think of, like Taurus the bull, no, it's like Taurus the cow, if it's the Empress, it would be. And then you have Hathor in Egypt, which is the cow goddess of empire, like not empire of domination and control, but empire of literally, like back then empire meant the land of milk and honey, where there's so much abundance that nobody really has to struggle for anything, right? There's just, it's the life of leisure. It's the Garden of Eden, right? And so I just started to notice all these ways, all these inconsistencies in how there's this distortion of the feminine, right? So when you look at the Hierophant card in the traditional tarot deck, it looks like the Pope. Well, what do you think about the Catholic Church? It's like domination and control. The first thing that Rome did when they adopted Christianity is they started shutting down all the other religions, which were all the divine feminine mystery religions, right? Shut it down. And so, that's my anthropology degree coming out. It's like, oh, you see this sea change where, to get this control, and let's understand that the mind always wants to control what it doesn't understand because it's a safety thing, right? And so I just, like, one thing led into another, and here I am, talking about, like, the way we think about spirituality is kind of like pants on head. That's an old saying. It's like pants on head. Yeah, you can wear your pants on your head, but it doesn't really work that way, right? And my degree in psychology, you really study the mind and how the mind thinks, and one of the things that we know is that there's a psychological thing called projection. So whatever you are, you tend to project onto the world around you, right? So if you're loving and kind and giving, you just kind of think that everybody else is like that, or if you're somebody who, is kind of the cheater, you think everybody cheats, right? It's just like the way you are, you project that onto the rest of the world, and it's just normal. And I was reading this book. So the other thing is, as you mentioned, I've always had this, like, deep sensitivity. So I'm an empath. And as I was learning energy healing, everyone's saying, oh, you're not supposed to feel, like, when you're working on somebody, you're not supposed to feel their energy. You're supposed to create, like, the tube outside of you of energy coming down into them. And it's like, yeah, you can do that. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? But there was this thing where I'm like, okay, you don't have an ability to not use it, right? Like, the universe doesn't make mistakes. That's what we always hear. The universe doesn't make mistakes. The divine doesn't make mistakes. So I wouldn't be able to feel somebody's energy so clearly if I wasn't supposed to. Like, I'm doing something wrong. But I'm supposed to do this. Like, I'm definitely supposed to do this. I just don't know what I'm doing, right? And so I've been going down that road of, like, trying to figure out this connection with the divine feminine. Like, the first energy work session I ever had on me, the woman said, oh, Isis showed up really strong. And I was like, well, what does that mean? Okay, but, like, what does that mean? And so I kept getting all these messages about, like, my connection with the divine feminine and all of this. And so I just kept pulling on that string about, like, what is my connection with the divine feminine? And why is there, like, this weird kind of, like, inconsistency going on? And that's how we got here today, as I've just really pulled on those strings.
Do you want to share what the divine feminine means to you, just for people that are new to this?
Yeah, well, so that boy, that's been a long road. And that's one of the things that that was really confusing for me, because the way we describe the divine feminine is so all over the place. There's, like, oh, it's your intuition, your feelings, it's a very it's it's the non-active part of us. It's, you know, so I kept just reading and studying and reading and searching and collecting all these different ways that the divine feminine was talked about. You know, it's the passive, it's not the active. But then, you know, like, then we would talk about the fierce feminine, you know, and how crazy that is. And we all know that it's like, yeah, that's a thing. So wait, if like the feminine is supposed to be passive, then how is there this fierce feminine, which we all know the fierce feminine. How do we know that? Who's the scariest, most powerful character in the old fairy tales? The Wicked Witch, right? She's the one that everybody's like, oh dang, you know, like, watch out, right? So on a what who's the Carl Jung, what Carl Jung calls the collective unconscious. We all know that because it comes out in our fairy tales and our stories and all these different ways, and where, you know, like, there's the fear of the fierce feminine in the army, the infantry, which I was a part of. And we are like the boots on the ground, the guys that go in and do the dirty work, right? And we're the group that nobody else in the army wants to be a part of, right? We're the guys that were dumb enough to sign up for it. and what's our chant? We say, oh hail the infantry, the queen of battle, follow me. Because in chess, the queen is the most powerful piece on the chessboard, right? So the infantry, the most manly unit in the whole military, is the queen of battle, right? So that's at that this is to the extent that we all know that the fierce feminine is like the power of the universe. And yet we still have this contradiction in our mind of thinking about, oh, the God King energy up here somewhere that nobody can touch, you know, and nobody's not really afraid of. You know, you might be afraid of the church burning you at the stake, but you're not really afraid of like this thing up here. But so for me, you know, I finally kind of like came to the conclusion that, so we have unity, we have the unity energy, right? And then that creates the world of separation. And in the world of separation, it's kind of like, you know, when you see a picture of a prism, and that beam of white light goes through the prism and then splits out to all the colors, right? So from unity comes diversity, right? Separation. And in the field of separation, pretty much in the universe, everything that exists can be boiled down to two things. Binary. You have energy and you have consciousness. That's it. It's as simple as that. Everything boils down to, you have energy and you have consciousness. And even, you know, quantum physicists say that, like, we have energy and we have consciousness. And for me, since consciousness is masculine, then energy has to be feminine. It has to, because there's only two things, right? And so you have the energy field, which is the feminine. And so the way I say it is, the feminine is the is, which is confusing if you haven't taken a lot of philosophy classes, but it is what is. It is the thing that actually exists. And the masculine mind is the awareness of what is. The problem is that the awareness likes to sometimes think that it is what it is aware of, right? And we have these sayings where, like, no, you're not this, you're not that, you're the awareness of it, right? So our conscious mind is the awareness of what is. The consciousness isn't what it's being aware of. It's the awareness of what is. So the masculine is the consciousness, it's the awareness. The feminine is the what actually is. So in quantum mechanics or quantum physics, they say, something is in a state of potentiality until you focus on it. And then at that point, it actually becomes,
once observed.
Once observed, it actually becomes one of the possible things that it could be. So in the famous, a thought experiment for Heidegger's cat, right? Or Schrodinger's cat. Yeah, Schrodinger's cat. We don't know if the cat's alive or dead. And until we look at it, it's actually neither. It's in this quantum state, and then when we look at it, it resolves into either a dead cat or an alive cat, right? And so just because the observation precipitates it into the thing doesn't mean that the mind creates it, the energy. It's just creating it's just creating an action for it. It's creating a container for it. It's kind of like it's taking the clay and it's molding it. It's not the clay itself, and it doesn't create the clay, but it takes the clay and it can mold it into a shape, right? So our thinking, we have this thinking about like go up, go up, go up, go up. And there's a time and a place for that, to go up, to go way up, right? Like we want to get our perspective, but at some point you got to come back down, because this is where the action is. The action is down here. But we want it to be, the point of going up is so that you can get perspective and you can understand what's going on and have more fun and a more successful time down here. You're not just kind of blindly moving about, right? But there's just like in all of our lexicon and so much of the way we talk about spirituality, it's all about going up into dimensions and kind of like escaping, and even escaping the matrix. Like I understand what people are trying to say when they say escape the matrix, and I agree with that. But it's just funny that the word that's being used literally talks about, like, the root word for matrix is mother in Latin, right? It's like matrix is kind of like the field of life, it's like the place where life can grow. What we're really talking about is escaping the maze of your mind, escaping the, like the stories and the illusions up here, like the things that we tell ourselves, the things that aren't real, or and that's a reason to go up. When we go up, it's easier to let go of attachments and to get that 10,000 foot view and go, oh yeah, that thing that I was doing, I get it now. Like the metaphor that I like to use is, let's say that you're on this long hike in the woods, in the mountains somewhere, and you've kind of gotten turned around and you're like, oh man, I don't know where's the base camp. And so you see a fire watch tower, and you climb up the fire watch tower. And if you've ever been in one of the national forests and you've climbed one of those up, they're like 250 feet high. It's a lot of steps. You're like, oh, to get up there. But once you get up there, you've got this great vista and you can see all around, and you're like, oh, okay, that's where we need to go, that direction. But then you have to like climb back down and head in that direction. You can't just sit up there and go, okay. Like, you're never going to get there, right? It's like you've gone up there, you've gotten your clarity, you've got your directions, you see where you're going, but then you got to come back down and get back down into the thick of the woods and keep making your way in the direction, right? And so I feel like that's where a lot of our spirituality is right now, is that we're kind of like climbing the tower. We're struggling to climb the tower, and once we get up there, we're like, I've made it. And it's like, man, Have you? But
Well, Dave, we're going to go to a quick commercial break, so hold that thought.
All right.
The UNX Network classes and workshops are enrolling now for 2025. If you're interested in psychic protection, chakra balancing, dowsing, or perhaps healing with sound and music, visit unxnetwork.com to see our complete series of live and on-demand classes and workshops hosted by the one and only Margie K. For example, in January 2025, you could spend 4 Saturdays with Margie for her exclusive live remote viewing workshop. Margie K is one of the most accomplished remote viewers in the world, and she will share her secrets and totally unique methods in this course. Some courses are open now. Seating is limited for these live courses, so register now at unxnetwork.com. UNX members use promo code XMEM for an additional 15% discount.
This is Margie K, and I'd like to say thank you to all of our KUNX show hosts, staff, listeners, and viewers for making us number one on Paranormal Talk Radio.
Ray Hobbs here for the UNX Network as we present a health and wellness spiritually based brand of hemp-derived CBD products made by Hopewell Farm in Harrogate, Tennessee. They apply Cathara energy work with all of their plants and products. All of their products are made in small batches and third-party lab tested for potency and legal THC levels with 6 strengths of 1 ounce oil to choose from. Know what you're buying and get what you pay for from Hopewell Farm. Applied directly to a specific area, Hopewell Farms topical salve. It comes in 1 ounce and half-ounce sizes made with all natural ingredients. And from now until January 2nd, use promo code KUNX Holiday for an additional 15% off all CBD products. Find the Hopewell Farm link and coupon code on the UNX Network website at unxnetwork.com. That's unxnetwork.com. Promo code KUNX Holiday.
Hello and welcome back to Starseed Ascension. We are here with tonight's guest, Dave Witcher.
So
welcome back.
That was a lot. Do you have any questions?
That was a lot. I do. Yeah, it's all very fascinating and interesting. Of course, that I love talking about this stuff and hearing about it as well. Yeah, so it sounds like, having that big God consciousness or bigger perspective, dropping it down in the body, very important. I did want to go back to your speaking of, the Catholic Church, for example, and kind of putting away anything that spoke of, or I don't want to say spoke of, but that was connected to sort of this divine feminine power. And just wanted to get your thoughts on why you feel like that power is feared.
Yeah, it's a good question. I feel like I know you're familiar with the saying, as above, so below, as within, so without.
Yes. And
I feel like everything that's going on in the world around us is really just it's a reflection of what's going on within us. And so I'll go back to when I said our mind is always seeking to control everything. And so control feels like safety. So I think it's sort of, and this kind of goes back to why I think it's important to reframe how we think about things. So it's kind of like using the right tool for the right job, right? So when we set the mind up as in that kind of leadership position, and we ask it to predict the future, the mind will freak out, because the mind cannot, it's not meant to know what's coming way down the road, right? The mind is really an excellent tool for very close-up work. It's like a microscope. You can see a lot of detail of everything that's right in front of you. But if you want to try and use it like a telescope, it's not going to work, right? So a telescope is really good at seeing a little bit of detail way out. Like we use telescopes to look at stars and galaxies and things like that, right? We don't get a lot of detail, but at least we can see it. We go, oh, wow, look at that, right? And if we try to use a microscope for that, we'd just be like, like, I don't see anything. And so the mind is really good for our like right here, right now, day-to-day tasks. And that's why Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now, what healed his mind was to stop trying to use it for anything but the like what's right in front of me. And then there's kind of so that's our like conscious mind. So we have our conscious mind and our the part of our mind that connects to, or I'll say like the tangible mind and the intangible. We all say that we have our 5 senses, and then we say we have a 6th sense. We actually have 10 senses, right? For every tangible sense that we have another intangible sense that we call psychic senses. But everybody has them. We're just not good at developing them. But when you use those intangible psychic senses to feel what's coming up, or actually even to check in with your connection to your inner feminine, because your inner feminine is also your soul blueprint. It's going to steer you in the right direction. So for the big things like, should I take this job? Any questions that are kind of way out there, like radar, you want to connect into your inner soul blueprint, your feminine energy, listen to that. And it's your, I call it your golden compass, right? And it will just always steer you in the right direction. It's not going to give you a lot of information, but it will say yes or no. If you say, I had that, I had a time where I went to go visit a friend out in Las Vegas, and he kind of surprised me the day before I flew out. He said, hey, I talked to the hiring manager where I work, and I told them about you, and they're really interested that, like they want to interview you for a project manager position. And I was like, oh, and at the time, I was like, I should probably, do that. I shouldn't say no because I don't have any money. And so I, packed up my suit. I flew down. I was flying down for the Memorial Day weekend, and was it Labor Day weekend? I forget. But I go in, I interview. They're just like, oh my gosh, Dave, we want to hire you right now. Like we just want to hire you. And when I was, my sister a long time ago told me, never say yes immediately. Just take a day at least, to sit with it, right? And so I said, yeah, like I had a great interview with them, and so I wanted to say yes, but I just said, let me sit on it, and I'll let you know, right? And the more I sat on it, the more it was just like a no. I was like, no. And then the funny thing is that he had a pool party, and I met a woman there who had grew up in Kansas City, moved out to Las Vegas, and she was just like, oh, it's like so hard to find anybody out here to get along with. And I was just like, that's not a coincidence, right? Like I was feeling a no. I flew back home. I called them up, and they're like, okay, wait, before you say anything, the hiring manager made a mistake, And actually she wants to hire you for an even higher level position with more pay.
Oh, geez.
Oh, it's making it even harder. I stuck to my guns and I said, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just not feeling it. And, you know, it was a tough conversation because they really wanted to bring me on. And all of my friends were like, what are you doing? It's like a 6-figure salary. And I had a friend who was living out there as well, who was looking for work and couldn't find work. And he was angry that I didn't take the job. But then like 9 months later, the company just goes through this big downsizing. And even the people that wanted to hire me were getting laid off. And I was just like, well, you know, there you go. Right. Like my mind could never have like predicted any of that. But connecting to my feminine energy, it was just like, oh yeah, that's a no, because, you know, our feminine side is the energy. It's the quantum field. It's going to give us feedback on, you know, like, is this where I want you to go? Or, you know, is this in kind of opposition, or, you know, like all that kind of stuff. And so, and I think that kind of rolls into, I don't know if that answers your question, but it just rolls into what does this all mean for anybody? And whether you change how you talk about escaping the matrix or not, the main thing that I want everyone to kind of get to is that the whole point of us being here is to play with the energies in our life, starting with the energy inside of you, right? To develop your senses. And I don't call them psychic gifts anymore, because I don't call my eyesight, you know, like my physical gift, you know. I have eyesight, you know. Not everybody does, unfortunately, but you know, everyone does have psychic gifts. Whether you have the physical version of that or not, you've got the psychic version, because we all start off energetically first, and then we grow into, you know, it's not our sixth sense, it's our first sense. It's the one that we have first, and then the other ones come out are physical expressions of those intangible energetic gifts. And so when we're developing our ability to become aware of these things, that's the whole point of spirituality, is to develop our ability to become more and more aware of what's already here. Like your body is the golden chest, and your mind's willingness to explore in the darkness of that is the key that's going to open up the treasure, right? It's all here. And yet what I see too often is ways that we use these tools to kind of run away from the uncomfortableness of that exploration. And I know that when I first started, you know, after I took my channeling class and it opened up the gates of all that energy coming through me, there were times where I was feeling so much energy flowing through me. I was like, I don't like this. I want off, you know, like somebody like stop the roller coaster, let me out of here. Right. And it was really, it's been really a rough ride the last several years, until I finally got to a point where I thought, you know, what if all this craziness that I'm feeling, it is really difficult at times, like really uncomfortable, really difficult. And I was like, well, wait, it's most of the difficulty comes from me thinking that there's something going wrong, that like this isn't supposed to be happening, and that I'm doing something wrong and something bad is happening and stuff like that. I'm like, what if this is really just like par for the course? Like what is actually normally happening? And I stopped freaking out about that and just kind of lay back and just be the observer, you know, and just be like, all right, this is really weird and kind of uncomfortable, but whatever. And it got a whole lot easier. Like it really started getting easier. And I think of it as when there's been times in my life where I've gotten really bad out of shape, and then I'll like start lifting weights and your body just feels horrible. You wake up in the middle of the night, you like every muscle in your body is just aching. And it feels awful, except you know that on the other side of that is you're going to feel a lot better. It's like, oh yeah, this is just, like, and I'm going to feel better. And so I'm like, what if like this energetic exploration is just like that, right? And it is. Like, as I've been going through this, and I continue to allow myself to just explore all these kind of uncomfortable parts of myself and uncomfortable interactions with others, that more and more, I kind of have to keep reminding myself, because that's the learning process. When you got the old story and you're replacing it with the new, and you're like, oh no, wait, no, it's not that anymore. Remember, it's this, and you go, oh yeah, okay. And it has gotten like so much easier for me to be in the midst of all this crazy energy swirling around, and then oh, everything's calmed down again, and it's like, oh, okay. And so, I want to encourage everyone that this is the whole path. This is the path. It's about bringing our awareness down into the awareness of us, what's inside of you, and then everything going on around you, And there's definitely times when you're like, okay, like, we don't work out constantly. We don't, we don't do anything constantly. So there's times that you engage, times that you don't. And there's times that, like, you do the work, and there's times that you relax and think about something else. But that's the thing. It's really like, so the way I've been applying this in my life is anything I feel uncomfortable with, whether that's like something like a physical uncomfortableness or having a conversation uncomfortableness. And you're probably laughing because, the thing that I'm most uncomfortable with is this right here, coming on screen and talking about. I literally, when I was in the Army, I could get in an airplane and stand at the door, look down 2,000 feet, and then jump out without blinking. Like, that was not a problem for me. But the idea of coming on camera and talking is just terrifying, which is funny. And I think that's probably why this is the case, because it's just so ridiculous that I can do these things that would normally terrify people. And then, like, something that's kind of scary, but not really that bad, like, just absolutely terrifies me, is such a, like, ridiculous contrast that there's a part of me that goes, yeah, that's really ridiculous. And then it says, oh, okay, that's how that works, that dynamic, right? And hopefully I'll get to start teaching a lot of people, like, how to work with that dynamic to make it more manageable. Because as you walk through your uncomfortableness, when you walk through your fear, and you're able to feel the uncomfortableness, on the other side of that is gold. It's just gold, right?
Do you think that goes back to like something that's triggering, that's saying like that something terrible and awful is going to happen as a result of you doing the thing?
Like, so for me, I think for most people, we have instances where something happened to us, and and it was just very jarring to us. And because of that, we have that, like what they call gun shy, when a dog has never heard a gun go off before, and it starts to freak out from that loud, unexpected sound. They call it gun shy. But the way you train your dog is you just slowly, work them into hearing that noise, and they're like, oh yeah, it's no big deal. So I think most people, we've had experiences early on in our life that have created a kind of like a moment in our psyche where just like, we don't want to go back there, I think this particular thing for me it's kind of like so overblown, like over the top ridiculous, that it was probably set up before I was born, right? Like it was one of those things where it's just like, no, like you're gonna have this thing, and it's not gonna make any sense. And so the knowledge that I got from it is that when something like this just makes no sense at all, you can't think your way out of it because it's not logical.
Right.
So you can't think your way out of it. You have to take action. Like there's that saying that you can't, and I think it was Einstein, you can't solve a problem at the level it was created. And so there's just certain things that the mind can't solve on its own. And it's even, I was reading this book called Awakening Shakti by Sally Kimpton. And it's a great book. I love it. And I was reading a story in there about how the gods had created a demon, because anytime the mind tries to create without the feminine, you're just imagining something. You're creating a story, and if you put too much energy into it, it becomes an illusion. And those illusions start to like have a life of their own. We call them demons, or inner demons, right? And so this is a story where they had created a demon, and all the gods were trying to fight it, and they couldn't. They just could not defeat the demon. And it was like their very last thing where they're like, oh, we're at the, we've tried everything. And then they're like, oh, let's call in the goddess. And so they call in the goddess, and she's there, and she says, hey, I've been here the whole time waiting on you. All you had to do was ask. And so that is kind of the passiveness, that is the passiveness of the feminine, where, that thing is sitting there, and you have to decide to work with it. Like that clay is there. If you want to make a plate out of it, you got to actually like grab the clay and make the plate out of it, right? You have to, that's the mind has to decide to do it, has to be aware and decide and all that kind of stuff. And so they said, okay. And then, the male gods determine the form that the goddess shows up in. So again, the mind is determining the structure. It's becoming the vessel, the container for the energy. And then the goddess comes in and kills the demons, because what's the only thing that can destroy an illusion? The truth, right? The truth, right? And so, and that's in all of the different stories, so in this case, the divine feminine shows up as the goddess Durga, the warrior goddess who slays the demon. She's got like 10 arms and all these different weapons and stuff like that. But sometimes she shows up as Kali, who killed all the demons for Shiva, when Shiva got mad and destroyed the god of desire, Kama. And then the world started to just fall apart because desire actually motivates us to do things, right? And so trying to not let anybody know his mistake, he scoops up the ashes and speaks a mantra into it and says, okay, we're good. And it creates a demon that nobody could destroy, except Kali comes down and destroys the demon. And I was reading this passage because a friend of mine, she had asked me, like, why does it always show Kali standing on top of the body of Shiva? And so I was reading that passage for her, and I was like, wait a minute. And it hit me. I was like, so when the goddess comes out and slays all the demons, the gods start to get worried, and they're like, oh my gosh, she's gone wild. We can't control her. She's going to destroy everything. So when you're working with a coach and they're like, okay, time to let go of some of your, like stories that you have that you need to let go of. And you're like, no, I'm not ready to let go of those. Right. That's the mind is like, I'm not ready to let go of this yet. Like, no, it's like you're holding on to your safety blanket. You're like, I don't want to you're like, kill those demons over there, but like, I still want this one, right? But the truth is just like, I'm coming in to clean house, you know? And so the mind is like, oh, we can't control the goddess. She's out of control. We got to stop her, you know? And that's where Shiva devises that way. I'm going to pretend like I'm dead. She's going to trip over my body, and then she's going to be remorse, and we'll wake her out of her bloodlust. And it's like, gotcha, you know, put her back under control, stuff a lid on it, you know? And I was like, wow, this reminds me of another story. It was an Egyptian story about how the sun god Ra released Sekhmet out of his left eye as like the fire lion. And she came in to destroy his enemies, right? To destroy like the demons. And then she's cleaning house, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, she's out of control. She's going to destroy everything. We got to find a way to like get her back under control. And so they came up with this ridiculous thing where they put all this red paint and beer, and she's going to think it's blood, and she'll drink it and get drunk. And then we're like, gotcha, you know? And I was like, this is like 3,000 years of the masculine mind, like gaslighting the feminine. It's like right there. That's when I had my really big aha moment. I'm like, oh my God. It's like, you know, like, hey, you're getting a little emotional. Like you're getting how many women out there have heard that? You're getting a little emotional, right? But that happens at every level, right? It happens at the societal level. It happens at the you know, like your personal interactions level, but it also happens within us, right? Our mind is like, oh no, that thing that you really want me to do is really scary. Ooh, no, like I can't predict what's going to happen if we do that. I'm just going to keep it under control, right? And we even have it at like the mythological level, right? You know, I mean, it's at all levels where the mind is desperately trying to avoid danger. And so it's trying to always keep the feminine under control. And one of the ways that it does that is it gaslights the feminine and says, you're scary. You're a dark, evil witch. You're using mind control on me. You're casting a spell. Or even things like we say, oh, that's an earthly desire. Ooh, nope. That's an earthly desire. Or even chthonic is like the deep in the cave. It's dark and scary. Look at like, everybody's talking about the age of Aquarius. Oh, it's going to be so amazing. And I'm like, really? Is it? Because in my view, every sign has a positive, what I call a mature version of the energy and an immature version of the energy, depending on your level of understanding, right? So everybody said, oh man, the age of Pisces was so terrible because of that dang feminine water energy. It's murky. It's full of illusions. I'm like, is it full of illusions, or are you just having trouble seeing, right? And the age of Aquarius is going to be so great. I'm like, well, not if we're all ruled by AI, you know, like that's like the immature version of the age of Aquarius. I think we have two ways we can go with the age of Aquarius. AI rules us all for the next 2,000 years. And then we finally go, oh, that was the wrong thing to do. Or we remember that AI is just a tool. It's just a tool. But like when you really want to connect and get answers, use this to connect up and connect to the Akashic records and get answers. And I think, you know, for years, everyone was talking about like this earth that was going to split. And I'm like, what do they mean by that? And I think that's where we're coming to, is the people that are going to really dive deep into AI and trust that to do all their thinking for them, versus the people that are going to continue to learn how to connect up into the intangible realms and get information and ideas about how to do things and what to do from there. And then just, you know, use the tool as a tool, but not let it do your thinking for you.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole point of the age of Pisces was to learn that you are your own personal Jesus. And Jesus even said that. Jesus said, after I'm gone, everything I've done, so will you, and greater. And it took us 2,000 years to really like pay attention to that and go, oh, now I get it.
Well, now we have to have a part 2 because we can spend a whole nother hour talking about that, but we have just a little bit of time left, and I want to make sure that we get your information out there. So Dave, how can the people work with you to learn more about what you talked about tonight and just other services that you offer?
Well, I have a website, and it's kind of a website that I've been ignoring for the most part, but you can still email me, go to the website, email me, contact me, and it's radiantmoonhealing.com.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for you and conquering your fears and being with us today. And thank you to everyone watching, listening. May you find peace in the mysteries of the cosmos. Much
Thanks,
love.
Amy.
Bye.